Welcome to another tutorial of MongoDB series. My name is Jairaj and thanks for joining again. So in previous tutorial we have set up our Atlas free tier cluster, which gives us 512 MB storage space for free forever. And if you don't have Mongo in your machine, you can use that cluster for practice as well. And also you can use it with your personal projects. Moving ahead from this tutorial, we will go into technical discussion, but before that we need to know few things about some important shell commands. Also, we need to learn a little bit about databases, collections, and documents. And here in this tutorial, we will discuss that. So let's get started with this tutorial. So most of our work will be with Mongo Shell, and previously we have seen a little bit about Mongo Shell, and we know that to interact with MongoDB server, we need to fire various commands on Mongo Shell, and I want you guys to make a list of those commands as we learn and include a one line of description so you can use the documentation in future as your reference purpose. So first thing we need to do here is to start our Mongo server and connect Mongo Shell with it. So let me start our Mongo server by firing this brew service start MongoDB community command, because I'm on the Mac, and if you are on the Windows then you can fire MongoD command. So this started my Mongo server, and let me do Mongo command. This Mongo command will connect Mongo Shell with this server. And I already told you to write down all the commands, and we already seen two commands. First command is to start server, second command was Mongo to start our shell. But sometimes our handwritten notes also don't work. In that case, getting help from Mongo itself is very important, and there are help on every layer. So first and biggest help is their official documentation. And if you want to see Mongo's official documentation, then you need to go to your browser, open mongodb.com, and here we have this document menu, and inside this docs we have different options. So we are using Mongo server right now. You can go here, and all of this menu, all of this information is about them. And additionally, this resource is pretty up to date. You can choose your versions from here if you are using some other versions of Mongo, and most of the time try to refer this document. And the next help Mongo Shell can provide us. So let me close this Mongo Shell first, and to close Mongo Shell we have another function which is a quit function. You can fire quit, and if you hit enter it will close our Mongo Shell. So moving ahead, let's get a help on Mongo command. Let's say you want to see what kind of different information you can pass with Mongo command. So in that case, you need to do Mongo and then ---- and help. And if you hit enter, it will give you information about how to use this Mongo command and what are the different options we have with this Mongo command we can use. So if you remember in our previous tutorial, when we connected with our cluster with Mongo Shell, at that time we passed some extra information with this Mongo command, right? So let's say your Mongo server is running on some other location, it is not in your local, and in that case you need to pass IP address and port number with user credentials. In that case you can use this host and port argument. Also we have this U and P. U is for user and P is for password. You can use this authentication options. So for example, let's say I want to connect with my local with this extra information, that I can do --host, and then I can pass 127.0.0.1, which is a local host IP, and I can pass port number, which is our default port 27017, and I can pass user information, let's say test user, and if I have password I can do password, something like this. So this way this information provided by help can be used with so many other options. And also for connection, we can create connection string which has a format of something like this, where we need to pass user and password with colon, and then we have @ and we have URI and port number. So basically there are multiple ways to connect with server. So let me connect with my Mongo Shell with this command, and we don't have user and password. So let me remove that. If I hit enter, you can see it got connected with this one. So our Mongo Shell is running and it is connected with server. And I can fire help command here also, which will give me the help of Mongo Shell, not the help of Mongo command. And for that, let's say I do help, and if I hit enter, you can see here we have multiple command which is possible at this level. So here, as you can see, we have many different options, and first command is db.help. So this db.help we can use to get help on db methods. Next we have collection help. That means is if you want to see collection related help, then we need to fire help function on connection name. So we will discuss this soon. And next we have different help function for different tasks, such as we have admin, we have connect. And next one we have this help keys. So if we fire this help keys, we will get the information about Mongo shell keystrokes. So here it is saying that we have three different shortcuts. We have Control A to go to the start of the line, we have Control E to go to the end of the line, and we have Control K to delete the end of the line. So if I fire Control K, then it will delete everything on shell except the current line. So let's say if I do Control K, it will clean my Mongo shell, and now I can fire my command again by pressing arrow key. So arrow up key will give you your previous fired command, so you can select your command, you don't need to write it again. So let's say if I fire this help keys again, then it is giving me the same output. So moving ahead, this key help is also telling that if we have multi-line expressions, we can write it in the shell without closing the parentheses and braces. So for example, let's say we have expression something like function abc, and we have this parenthesis, and if I don't close this parenthesis and hit enter, so it is showing that three dots, and meaning that previous line is still going on. We can continue write this code here something like this, and when we finish our JavaScript expression, we can close this parenthesis and Mongo shell will run that command. So next let me do Control K to clean the Mongo shell, and again let me fire help command. So next we have this help of miscellaneous things. So this help miscellaneous is also important because it will give us the information about various stuff. So I made a mistake, it is MISC. So this information we can use at the time of writing the JavaScript expressions. So let me clean my shell again with Control K, and if I do help again. So next we have show DBs and show collections to get a list of all the databases and the collection inside the databases. And we're gonna use these commands very often. So same way we have this show users and profiles, and we have system logs. So this way this help command is very helpful, and other important things I will keep mentioning along the way. So moving ahead, we have database to discuss, and the idea of a database in Mongo is a little bit different than the SQL database. And the best analogy I found to understand it easily is the analogy of library. So consider a library, a huge library divided into different sections. We have sections for fictions, we have non-fictions, we have science and technology, we have business, we have mathematics, so many sections. And inside those sections we have books, and inside those books we have pages, and pages contains the data. So same way our Mongo as a whole package is kind of library. Then inside this library we have different sections. So these sections are like a databases which holds the same kind of information together. And inside this database we have collections. So these collections are like a books inside the sections, and some books are 50 page long and some books are 1000 page long. So same way collection can be of different size, and this collection have documents same way books have pages, and these pages or documents contains the data. So moving ahead, first let's see the list of already existing database, and for that we have command something like show dbs, and here we have three database already there, which is a system database, and Mongo server and Mongo storage engine uses this database for various purpose. So for example, let's say I want to see what is inside this local database, then we have use command. So this use command will select that database, and one thing to note here is that we have something called db object, and this database local will be assigned to the db object after use of this use command. So next time I don't need to use this local word, I can just use db word instead of that. So here as you can see, it is saying switch to db local, which is a confirmation that we selected our local database. So we choose our local database, and now if I say show collections, then I can see that it is giving me the list of collections. So inside this local database we have startup log collections, and then I can do something like db, which is pointing to our database. Then inside that database I can see startup underscore log, which is our collection name, and then find, and then I can say pretty. So as you can see here, let me reduce the size, and it is showing us the startup logs of the database. So Mongo is storing information about Mongo startup and location details and stuff like that. So we have this path, and we have this db path, and that kind of information. So system uses these three database for various purpose, so we can't use them. So we need to create our own database. But before that, I want to see where this all data is going. So if you are on Windows, your data location will be inside C drive, and if you are on Mac, then our root folder. But if you are not sure about your data locations, then we have one function for that, which is server cmd line options. But let's say you can't remember this function, then Mongo shell will complete these functions for you. So let me make it bigger again so you can see, and we have controls K so to clean the Mongo shell. Let's say I type something called db, then if I do dot and if I hit tab key 2 times, then it is showing me all the possible functions I can use here. So here I'm gonna use server, so let me write server, then again I can use tab key, which is showing me the different commands. So we have this server cmd line option, so I can use that. So cmd and again tab key will finish that function. And if I hit this, it is giving us the information about our different path. And for us, this db path is important because we are storing our actual data in this location. So we have user, then inside user we have local, then variable, and then we have MongoDB. So I'm on Mac, that's why it is showing something like this. If you are on Windows, then it will show a C drive and your location. So go to this location. So I'm on root, and if you are on Mac, then most probably your information will be hidden. So in that case, we have one shortcut to show hidden folders, which is shift command and dot, and you can see we have this user folder. Inside user we need to go to local, then we need to go to variable, and we have this MongoDB. So inside this all our data is going, all our data files is going here. So I open this side by side, and you can see our file system as well as our terminal. Now let's create database, and for that we can directly say something like use test, and here switch to test name means test database is selected and assigned it to the db object. But question here is we had only 3 database and test wasn't there. Then without creating test database explicitly, how we can fire use command and select the test database? And again, if I do show db's, test is not here. So what is happening here? And the answer is, in Mongo, until we put some data into the database will not get generated, will not get created. So look here in my data files location where we have these 3 files. We have collection 0, collection 2, and collection 4. And now let's say if I add some collection into this newly created test database using our create collection function, something like db, then we have create, and if I hit tab key, then it is showing me that we have this collection option, and inside this collection method I can pass the name. Let me pass employee, and if I hit enter, you can see here this collection 10 got created, and this file contains data of this employee collection. And if I do show db's now here in my terminal, then it will show us this test database. So in discussion, we have seen two things, use command to select the database and create collection, and we pass collection name as an argument and we create the collection. Next, let's say I don't want this database, and then we can drop this database by using drop database function. And for that db, and as I mentioned, db means current database, and that we selected using our use command. So db dot drop, and if I hit tab key, then it is finishing the function, and if I hit it, it is saying that it is dropped. So now if I do show db's, then our test database is not there. So there are so many operations we can perform on database, and along the way we will discover more. But if you guys want to do some practice, we will have some help command. So if I do db.help here, then you can see it is giving us the long list of different functions, and you can practice with these functions, and you can learn more about this. So let me do Control K to clean our database shell. Next we have collections, and so we mentioned before collections are like book. It holds same kind of data. So for example, collection of employee details, or collection of customer details, or some product details. And creating collection is a very easy process, and normally in real world applications we don't need to create collections manually because our code generally creates collection for us. But here for practice purpose, or let's say for some reason you need to create collections, then we can create here, and for that we're gonna use here create collection method. And for that I can do db.create, and if I hit tab, then Mongo shell will finish that function for me. Then inside that function I need to pass name of the collections. So this will create a collection name employee, and if I do show collections, I can see we have these employee collections here. And also user can use insert one function to create collection. So for that, let's say I do db, then I have some collection, let's say employee 2, and then I can do insert one. So this insert one function will insert a document inside this function. So let's say I do something like first, and then I can do name. So what this function will do is this function will go and check whether this employee 2 exists or not. If this employee 2 exists, then this function will insert this first name document inside that collection. Otherwise it will create the collection and then insert. So if I hit enter, then it is returning us something, right? And so now if I do show collections, you can see here we have two different collections now. So we have many different ways to create collection, and also we have different kind of collections. So we have something called capped collections, and in first tutorial I have mentioned that Mongo has a special collections to hold a special kind of data. So these capped collection are a special type of collection with various features, such as it supports high throughput operations, that means high read and write speed. Also, it can insert and retrieve document based on insertion order. And it is a fixed in size. That means we need to specify size of the collection, and if that size exceeds that limit, then Mongo will automatically delete the oldest document to make space for the new one. And we can define the number of documents also. So let's say if I define 20 documents, then only 20 documents will be there. If I try to insert 21st document, then first document will be deleted automatic. And we can create this capped collection with the same function but with some extra argument object with it. So for that we need to do db, then create collection, and inside this first I need to pass the name of the collection, and let's say I do logs, and then I need to pass some object. So inside this object I need to pass three values, and first is a capped. So what I need to do is I need to do capped, and value of this will be true because we are creating the capped collection. And next one is we need to pass the size. So I can do size, and I can pass this value here. So this value, let's say if I pass 4048, so this is in the bytes. That means I am assigning 2 KB value here to these collections, and I can only store 2 KB data here. And one thing to note here is that if you want kept collections strict in size, then we need to pass a value little bit higher than what you need, because Mongo is going to use some of the space for management purpose. So let's say you need less than 2 KB data. So for example, let's say you need a little bit less than 2 KB data, then pass 2 KB or a little bit more than that. So I'm passing 2048, then that means almost 2 KB. And third argument we have is the number of document. So what I'm going to do is I can do something like max equal to 2 documents. So this collection will hold only 2 documents, and every time I try to save third one, the oldest one will be deleted. So let me close this, and if I hit enter, it is saying okay, so it got created. Now if I do show collections, we have 3 database and one of them is log. So let me add 2 documents here, something like db, then logs, and dot insert one, and inside this I can say something like count 1, and if I hit this, we insert this, and again I'm gonna insert second, and if I do something like db dot logs dot find dot pretty, don't worry about this find and pretty function, we will cover in our upcoming tutorials. If I hit this, you can see that we have 2 documents here. Now let's say I want to add a third document, and if I enter this third document, and now if I do find and pretty, I can see we have only 2 documents, 2 and 3. We don't have first one, so first one got deleted automatic by the Mongo. So these kind of collections are very useful for various special kind of data. So for example, we have loggers, and generally in big system we have so many logging mechanisms, and every time we need to store somewhere, it is not for long time. So you can assign this collection to that logger, and that logger can put data here, and after some time, after it exceeds the limit, it will get deleted automatic. And additionally in Mongo we have something called TTL indexes, which is a feature we can add to any collection, and this feature will delete the documents after some time. It will be based on time. So in capped collection we have based on memory or based on a number of documents, but if you use TTL indexes, then it will be based on time. Over there you can specify like 24 hours, and after 24 hours the document will be deleted automatic. So we will discuss that along the way because it's a little bit advanced topic. And so moving ahead, we can also have help in the collections. So if I do db dot employee, and if I do help, then I can see we have so many different kind of options that we can use on the collection. So one of that option is this drop collection. So let's say I don't want any collections, then I can use this drop function and I can delete the entire collection. So for that, let me do show collections first, and we have these three collections. Now I don't want the logs and employee 2 collection, then I can do db then logs, and I can do drop, and same way for employee 2. So these two collections got deleted, and now if I do show collections, so now we have only one left, which is employee collections. So moving ahead, we have document, and as I mentioned before, document is like pages of the book. So inside collection we have documents, and Mongo stores data in document, and that's why we called it document page database. And inserting document is very easy. We have many functions for that. We will discuss them in our CRUD sections in detail, but for now let's say we just use insert one function. So here I can use this function like db.employee.insert1, and inside this function as an argument we need to pass a document that we want to save, and this function will add one document in our collection. So let's say in our employee collection we want one document, then I can do first name, and the first name will be Bruce, and the same way last name, which is Wayne. So we have Bruce Wayne, and if I hit enter, so now if I do find and pretty on this collection db.employee.find and .pretty, I can see we have these Bruce Waynes. But as you can see here, there is one more field added to this document, which is this underscore ID. So this field is very important because that represents the uniqueness to the document. With this unique ID, we can identify this particular document. So if you have worked with SQL, we have something called primary keys over there. And the same way here we have this object ID. So here this object ID is a system generated ID. We can pass our own value also if we want to leverage that field. But the only condition is that value should be unique. And when system generates this key, it guaranteed to be unique. And the reason behind that guarantee is that it is not just a random generated number. It is a combination of few values. It has hex representation of 12 bytes, and here the first 4 bytes or most significant 4 bytes represent the timestamp. So this 4 bytes is the time, and it represents the time at the creation of the document. Next 3 bytes are the machine ID, that means our machine unique ID, and then we have 2 bytes of process ID and 3 bytes of counter. Here one thing to note is that unique keys are generated at the driver side, not at the server side. But in case of SQL, primary key generation happens at the server side. So in that case, the server need to do some little bit extra work. But in case of Mongo, driver is generating that ID. And that is why counter and timestamp alone is not enough to make a unique value, because in real world, when so many clients are interacting with Mongo, it is possible to get a duplicate timestamp and a counter. And that is why adding machine ID and process ID is necessary. Also, we can use this ID to get timestamp of a document creation, and Mongo is giving this information without any effort of the user. So we know that documents are key and value pairs, and as a key we can pass any string, but as a value we can pass string, we can pass number, we can pass timestamp or other object. So we have collection for employee records, and employees have addresses. So in case of SQL, we used to create a separate table for only addresses, and we used to create a relationship between them. But in case of Mongo, we don't need to store that address somewhere else. We can store that address with the actual data. So let's say we have an employee with the first name Barry and last name is Alan, and he has two different address. So I can store addresses something like address, and I can do like this, and here I can say home, which is home, or and office as a star lab. So if I hit enter, and now if I do find and pretty, you can see we have this first name, last name, and inside that address we have another document which contains other data. So this way we can store object inside object, and we can create a multiple nested loops also here, and we call it embedded document or a nested document. And additionally, we can store arrays with multiple values here in the Mongo. So one thing to note here is that in Mongo there is no definition or schema about what kind of data we can put in the document or what kind of data are allowed in the specific field. So we have feature in Mongo to add schema, but Mongo's power comes when there is no schema, and this no schema methodology makes it versatile and all-purpose database. But we know that all feature come with some drawbacks and some limitations, right? So this feature, this schemaless behavior of the Mongo have so many advantages, but it has some limitations also. So this feature sometimes create confusion or inefficient use of the database. So that's why we have limit in document size of 16 MB. We cannot store document more than 16 MB. So maximum one document can hold 16 MB data. If we have documents bigger than that, then we need to consider splitting this document into smaller pieces. And if you think this makes sense actually, because 16 MB data is also huge in size. We can store so many data in a 16 MB storage. But let's say we want to store some file which is huge in size, some video file or some images, anything. So in that case, we have something called gridfs, and it is also a topic of another discussion, but it is possible to store that kind of huge files also. And another thing to keep in mind is every time we request something, some data from Mongo, then Mongo temporarily stores data into buffer, and at the driver side this deserialization happens. So at that time bigger documents can create performance issues also. So it is better to keep our document size lower than 16 MB. So for simplicity purpose, we compare SQL with MongoDB, and we have database in SQL. Same way we have database in Mongo. We have tables in SQL, we have collections in Mongo, and we have tuples, or we can say each rows in the SQL, and we have documents in the Mongo. So that's all for now in this tutorial, and we didn't cover everything here. We need to revisit this all other features along the way, but to move forward we needed this information. And in next tutorial we will start our CRUD operation discussion. And also, if you like this tutorial, share it with your friends, and put your views, questions, suggestions in the comment box, and also tell me what do you think about this video. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and see you in next one. Till then, keep learning. Thank you very much.